that today he's fashionable and famous, but not so long ago he was also a courageous pioneer. When he first started, modern dancing was not quite as popular as it is today. So how much of a struggle was it, and what sort of life did he lead? Well, those are just two of the many issues that I want to touch on when I introduce you to Astad Deboo. Welcome to the program, Astad.
Hello.
Now, before I say anything else, I have to say, you have the most incredible hairstyle.
Thank you.
Is it deliberate, or does your hair grow in that peculiar way?
No, it's sort of like a signature to my head, which started off a couple of years ago by a hairdresser friend of mine. I was going in for a performance, and he says, well, let's do something different. And from there, it has just become sort of a trend as regards my hair goes. And I've had a change of hairdresser. The one who started, unfortunately, is not alive, but
not a change of hairstyle.
No, a different one.
Now, your admirers say that you only have to look at his face when he's dancing to realize that he could never really have done anything else. Would you accept that?
No, I don't think so.
Your face doesn't give away your enjoyment?
Oh, it does. It does. My face gives away not only my enjoyment, my sorrow, my grief, my stress. Yes, my face is very transparent, and people can. I'm not very good in hiding my feelings, but I could have been other things also. But yes, dance did take up and has been, as you know.
There's almost a hint of regret when you say I could have been other things also.
No, there's no hint, no regrets. I would do it all over again. I would just hope that things would have been easier. Things would be easy the next time around, but no regrets.
I want very much to talk about the struggle you've had to go through, but first of all, tell me, you've been dancing for almost 50 years. Looking back, what does dance mean to you today?
Dance is everything for me. Has been, will be, and is presently is. It's ever-consuming. It's passion. It's life, more than life. If you can say it's more than life. I'm happy. I'm sad. It's everything. Dance is, as I said.
The amazing thing is, it began when you were barely 6-year-old. What attracted you to it?
Well, I think it's thanks to my parents, who saw probably this twinkle-toe child, and they said, let's get him out of the house and let him go. So I presume, as a little toddler, I must have been sort of, when the music must have been on, that I must have got up and did whatever I did. And they said, okay, let him go and study. But it wasn't planned that I would take it up as a career. As the years went on, I got more and more interested, and probably was paying more and more attention to dance.
But the amazing thing is, you were also the only son in the family. Was there no inhibition about the fact that you wanted to be a dancer, something that at that point of time was considered to be a feminine activity?
Not really. Never once, even in that young age, did I ever think that it was a feminine activity. And also the fact that even in school, there was as you know, kids can be very cruel. I don't even recall at any time that my classmates or people sneered or sniggered at me. In fact, it was always like, okay, come on, let's get Astad to dance at the school program, or later on even at the college program. So I don't have any traumatic experience to say. Once in a while there might have been sniggers, but it didn't really bother me, and I just let it brush over me.
Your sister tells an enchanting story. She says that when you first began going for Kathak lessons at the age of 9 to Guru Prahlad Das, you were the only boy in the entire class. Was that fun, or did that sometimes make you feel a little awkward as well?
No, as I said, it was fun, because I was enjoying. I wanted to dance, I was learning, and I got along with all the other girls. So there was no, at any point, to say that it was, feeling odd.
It was a dance performance that you saw during your final year in college in Bombay that really changed your entire attitude to dance. Tell me about it.
Well, my attitude had changed a little before that already. My parents had made me stop. And I was looking around. There was writing happening, painting. There was a change of contemporary painting. But in dance, I saw no real change. All I saw was the traditional classical stories, which was being told. And that was fine. I mean, that was... But when Murray Lewis Dance Company, an American dance company, came and presented their performance, it was like, for me, like a little child in a candy store. Wow! Like, what a kind of movement. So that's got...
You'd never seen anything like this before?
No, I hadn't, because growing up in Jamshedpur was sort of like, in a way, a little cultural desert in those days. A little bit of Indian classical dance came, but nothing international dance performances or music came. Now, apparently, Jamshedpur is a stopping point for...
So was that when the seed to be a dancer was born?
No, the seed...
I mean, to be a professional dancer.
Even at that time, I really didn't know I would become a professional. I was interested, and then another dancer in Bombay, based out of Bombay, Asha Kurlawala, came, who was studying in New York, and she did a show. And there I participated in her show, because she'd been studying at the Martha Graham School. So I sort of got to have a taste of it firsthand, movement-wise. Before that, I'd just seen it on stage. So that sort of got me thinking. And then I must say my parents were very supportive. Like, in a way, it was like a deal I'd done with my father that, okay, I finished college. Would you let me pursue what I wanted? And prior to that, I had planned to hitchhike to Europe just for the laugh of it, even before the admission to go to study in New York came through. So everything fell into place, and I went along with the flow.
Except there's a little bit of tragedy in the story, isn't there? Because permission to go to study in New York came through, but you actually weren't able to go. What went wrong?
Well, the visa didn't come through because as I was going to hitchhike and May, the monsoons were going to come, and before the monsoons hit, the ships would stop. So this was the last boat, so I had to get on the boat to go and get out.
And a silly bureaucratic thing like no visa stopped you?
No, but the visa I was going to apply in London because I was still waiting for some papers, and they said if the papers were in order, you would get it through. The papers were in order, but you know how it is. But it didn't matter. I did feel bad at that time, but I've always adopted this philosophy: the going is delayed, not denied. And look at it, what happened. I mean,
well, that's amazing. In fact, what happened is what I want to talk to you about, because you then went on to do something not just unusual, but in itself very creative. You spent 8 years traveling the world.
Yes.
Why?
Well, because when I started studying dance in London, and I went to study the Martha Graham style, and in those days, even for a long time, that if you were going to study dance, it had to be the Martha Graham technique or the Jose Limon technique or Merce Cunningham. And if you didn't study those techniques, you were not considered a modern dancer. But when I went to study dance, and I found a technique which was not really what I had expected, so I said, okay, and my visa was running out and I had to move on. So I said, okay, now let me go on a journey exploring the world, experiencing dance forms of other countries.
But literally propelled by the fact that your visa was running out each time, so you had to move on?
Right. That's exactly what happened.
And if the visa hadn't run out, you'd have stayed put?
Well, maybe there was an opportunity, there was a time, but no, the dance was the sort of motivating factor. So, okay, I've done it. It was like a mission. I'd gone to the country, I'd seen what I wanted to see about the country, what had to offer. I took what I could, and in certain countries I enjoyed the people, I enjoyed the culture, I stayed longer. If not, if I...
So you were traveling and learning at the same time?
Yes.
And in the process you were creating the Astad Deboo sitting in front of me today?
Well, it took time before the Astad Deboo really came about, but yes, those were the learning processes and growing up processes.
But how did you survive? I mean, what did you live off?
I lived off my dance, and I lived off thanks to the generosity of people and friends, or friends of friends. So the networking really helped and still helps.
But were there tough times, and were there moments when you actually perhaps didn't know where you were going to stay or what you were going to eat?
Well, yes, there were tough times. I mean, like it was a meal a day, or sometimes when you had a sort of a contact, you said, okay, that is a meal ticket, that even if you didn't get on, you had a meal which would be there.
Many your friend was simply useful for the dinner he gave you.
But that was very, very rare that I can recall of any meeting of people, friends, that was...
But the interesting thing is that to turn the old aphorism on its head, you had to dance for your supper.
Yes.
No dance, no supper.
Absolutely, you know.
The critics say that as a result of these 8 years dancing and learning, you've ended up creating a style that is an amalgam of all the different influences you've imbibed. Would you accept that?
Yes.
A bit of Kathak, a bit of Kathakali,
yes.
Martha Graham, Pina Bosch, Kabuki, Topeng, all of it?
Yeah, I mean, the base of today of my work is still coming from the Indian classical tradition of the Kathak and Kathakali. That is my foundation. And then through my experiences of studying and taking things of movements, not everything what I studied I took on and assimilated into my system, because again, dance is such a thing where you have, I don't want to look like a fool trying to sort of copy. I wasn't copying, I've always wanted to be original. And so took what sort of complemented my body, worked on it, and as the years have gone by, I've seen what sort of my body is able to do, and what sort of, looking back, if I were to do a retrospective of my work, people say, oh, like in those days you were much faster, quicker, now you're so slow, and like because you're running out of energy. It's not that. It's just that as wine matures, my work has matured, and working in a very minimalistic style right now is much more difficult than sort of jumping and sort of being in one corner and dashing to the other corner.
But there's a very interesting remark once made, a comment in fact, on your dancing. They said it's impossible to describe his style other than to say, this is Astad Deboo.
Yes, it is, because of the fact that when some people say, you studied so many styles, we don't see where is that technique. I mean, it's like, I said, you're not doing a dissection, you know. You want to put my work under a microscope and see it. There you can sort of, if you are sort of know a knowledge. But if you're look at my work for itself.
Take me as I am.
Yes.
But the funny thing is that people were really reluctant to appreciate and understand you to begin with. It took you years to get the recognition you have today. Do you think India has been slow to respond to modern dance?
Yes, it has. It's again because of the fact that the Indian classical dance lobby and even the schools have in the past been sort of very strict, and people thought it's not really our style, it doesn't come from our culture.
So there's an orthodoxy you had to battle against.
Yes, I did, and I still at times, but it's not so bad as it used to be before.
But the funny thing is, abroad you've had the opposite problem. There were many times when you toured abroad, particularly in the West, and they would point out that you weren't exotic enough.
Yes, and that is still today also. Again, slowly changing there, but yes, India still overseas is looked as the exotic, especially in the dance world. Arts and writing have sort of broken and have really are becoming mainstream.
But not dance?
Not yet.
So there's a real sense in which you sort of tend to fall between two stools.
Yeah, na ghar ka, na ghat ka.
So when in 1995 you got the coveted Sangeet Natak Academy Award, that must have been a truly special moment.
Yes, it was a special moment. I was traveling and my father rang me and said, you know, I had this award, and yes, it felt good. But I didn't go sort of jumping with joy. Probably.
But this was the first moment of official recognition, something you'd been yearning for.
No, the official recognition unofficially had been recognized. I mean, I used to...
But the stamp of approval.
Yes, probably, yes, that way. Because, yes, after that, there were sort of dramatic changes, even in gurus who had for a long time shunned my work, or, you know, didn't want to, came up and congratulated me or spoke about it, and they said yes.
By the time the recognition came, I sort of get the feeling that the hurt had also gone quite deep down in you.
Well, yes, it has been there, but, you know, but that all artists have that, you know, and I'm not harping on it. You have to keep on moving on, because if you're going to harbor the hurt, you're not going to
It's also part of the creativity.
Absolutely. I mean, cliched as it may sound, but it does, sort of, when I've been hurt or when I've been upset, my sort of creative juices have really been sort of put on the high, and I work madly, again, probably to forget what the disappointment has been, and to go on with it.
Let's take a break, Astad. I want to come back in part 2 and talk about the sort of dance that you've made uniquely your own, and a little bit about yourself as well. We'll be back in just a couple of moments. Don't go away. Welcome back. My guest is Astad Deboo. Astad, let's talk about your dance. It's often said when people have seen one of your performances that they end up recalling the unusual. The fact that, for instance, in Broken Pain you were stabbing yourself with a syringe, or that in Ritual you poured molten wax over your body. Are they being unfair in recalling it in those terms?
No, I mean, it was very much part of the work. It wasn't meant to sensationalize, or somebody said you're being very realistic, why couldn't you be symbolic, especially in Broken Pain, where I was really sort of concerned about the drug problem, and I had seen at close quarters friends being junkies in overseas, and I felt that sort of, sure, like inserting the syringe into my vein, the whole act really made people cringe and feel, or even when I'm having a withdrawal symptom, I'm physically sort of violent to my body, will I'd bang my head against the floor of the stage. But it was very much a part of the work, and I believed in it.
So it's a reality you're bringing out, not a gimmick that you're using to capture attention.
Not at all, not at all. And even the molten wax which was being poured over the body was part of the ritual of the cleansing. So I poured wax over the body. And some said, did you get burnt? No, because of the fact, again, probably it wasn't painful at all.
The other big question that people ask about your own choreography is, to you, is it storyline and structure that's important, or is it expression of feelings and emotions?
It works both ways. Sometimes there is a storyline, but in all my dances there is the feeling. I work on the sort of the rasas, though it's not sort of spelt out, but I do feel, even when I say it's an abstract form, but just the whole way of extending my arm, you know, there is a certain amount of feeling to it, depending on what I'm trying to convey, or under what sort of, there are sometimes props, and sometimes there is the music, so it's all a combination. So yes, sometimes it's story, and sometimes it's just look at the work as an abstract form, enjoy the lines of the body, and enjoy the tapestry of the movement which I'm creating.
The amazing thing is you've never been scared to experiment, not just with the dance form itself, but also around it. For instance, one of your greatest collaborations is with the Gundecha brothers. Now, they are known for Dhrupad, and it's a very unusual partnership. How did it come about?
Well, I was in Bhopal in 1989 giving a workshop at Bharat Bhavan, and I heard them sing. And I've sort of heard a lot of Indian classical music, but when they sang, something struck, the note in my sort of creative sort of bank went bling, and I enjoyed, and I felt that I could really move and respond to their music. And in the past, Indian classical, like the sitar, the flute, I could appreciate, I could dance for it for a little while, but after that I would get stuck.
You mean nothing went ping?
Yeah. So I said fine. And I spoke with them afterwards, and they apparently had also enjoyed whatever little they had seen of my work in Bhopal when I had performed.
So you actually took to each other?
Yes. I mean, all my collaborations, we take to each other, and people sort of respect each other's work, and they like what I'm offering, and I sort of like what they are offering.
But the interesting thing is it's not just at the classical end of the spectrum that you've collaborated, you've also collaborated at the other extreme with Manipuri martial art, Thang Ta.
Yeah, and that has been on now for the last 7 years. I've been working with them. Again, their form sort of attracted me.
The physicality of it?
Yeah, absolutely, the physicality of it, and it started off, but there's so much of, not spiritual, but there is so much of bhakti also in the boys who have been working, and I've seen, been going on to Manipur regularly to see and work with them. And it started off as the attraction of the movement. And again, when it's time to collaborate, I'm always looking at things to see what next, not because to make it a sensation or to make it different, but it's just, it also is coming from within that and again, all my collaborators, I still continue to work with them. It's not that it's a one-time thing and just say bye-bye and now
it's a continuing relationship.
Yeah, it's a continuing relationship.
But you know, hearing you talk, I get the feeling that dance for you is not just an expression of an emotion. It's not just physical. It is also cerebral in its conceptualization.
Yes, I mean, there is a cerebral in conception. I'm not, but at the same time, I'm not sort of trying to preach, or I'm not trying to be intellectual. You know, there are times it comes across, and
times when it doesn't. But the interesting thing is that you've never thought of setting up your own troupe or even a dance school. Is that because essentially you're a solitary person?
I'm a solitary person, but it's not that I didn't want to start a school, but the whole sort of scenario, and still is there, of because teaching is a great commitment. I'm a performer and a creator. Okay, I do teach, I do spend time going into the visiting professor, doing master classes.
But you've never felt a commitment to actually teach for the sake of teaching?
No. There are others who are there to teach. Okay, people say, but aren't you going to leave your legacy? Aren't you going to leave your style? I said, it's interesting. It's not necessarily that everybody is a born teacher. And as I mentioned, I haven't found students or people can say, "Hame seekhna, we want to study." But when they come to study, for a few, they find it very difficult, and they say, and with the whole MTV sort of culture, which is like taken over the city, it's like the whole attitude of the young ones today. I want to study today, put me on stage tomorrow, day after I want to be a star. You know, it's the instant microwave syndrome. which I call it, and I'm not willing to sort of...
Is this a
co-
reflection of
co-
the fact that you actually had no shortcuts yourself? You had to do it the hard way,
Yeah,
and you believe people have to do the same?
Absolutely. I mean, all art forms, you have to put in your sort of time, and you've got to grow, and you've got to... art is never that it's instant, you know.
It's not coffee.
No. And I find it... no, I'm not really... there's not the urge to... Yes, but on the other hand, I contradict myself, and I do sort of work, and I do teach the deaf, you know.
In fact, that's something you've been doing for 16 years.
Yeah, yeah. But...
what drew you to that community?
But again, it started off by a friend of mine, Zareen Chaudhry in Calcutta, who runs a deaf theatre company called the Action Players, and she said, why don't you come and give us a workshop? And it started off as that.
It was a challenge you accepted?
Initially, it was just a workshop, and I said, okay, fine, I'll do a workshop for 2 days, because I was going there to perform, and it happened twice.
And now has it become a commitment?
It has. It has.
An emotional commitment?
Yes, in a way, it is an emotional commitment.
So in a
too.
sense, this is something that you're determined to continue doing?
Oh, yes. It's very much there. It's very much on the charts. And as we speak, I am right now working on a new show which is going to be performed in an international deaf festival in Washington. And so that's what I'm working on.
But you know, you said something very interesting a moment ago. You said essentially you're a solitary person. And there's something else you haven't done. You haven't set up a dance school or a troupe, nor have you got married. Was that a deliberate decision or just the way things have turned out?
Well, in a way deliberate, and in a way things have turned out. You know, when you're working in the form and the struggle, I'm not trying to make myself a martyr, but the struggle that I've had to undergo, and still to a certain extent there is a struggle. And dance is a passion, it's full time. And when you're your own manager, your own fundraiser, own creative person, and trying to be sort of on 3 continents simultaneously, you know, where's the time for
Dance is a demanding mistress, and she leaves no time for a wife.
Absolutely. You know.
But are you lonely? Do you ever miss not having someone to share your life with?
No. I'm very fortunate. I have a wonderful parents, sisters, and a wonderful group of friends which keep me going.
And dance is sufficient for the lonely moments?
Absolutely. And not only for lonely moments, for other moments too.
And anyway, the loneliness is something that you like?
Yes, in a way I enjoy it. I'm not saying I won't deny it. But on the other hand, I am with people.
Astad Deboo, wonderful getting to know you.
Thank you very much.